There were rules in Shin Tower that no one wrote down. You did not touch what wasn't yours. Not on the lower floors. Not on the executive levels. And especially not on the 31st. Because in buildings like this, things were rarely misplaced. If something was left where it didn't belong, it was there for a reason. At 5:47 a.m., Talia Buhari broke that rule. She just didn't realize it yet. Talia stepped out of the service elevator at 5:47 a.m. with a humidity reader in one hand and a thermos of tea in the other, moving the way she always moved at this hour, steady, unhurried, wide awake. She had triple-checked her work authorization before coming up here. That was not nervousness. That was just how she operated. The 31st floor was restricted, and Talia Buhari did not go anywhere she was not supposed to be. The sensor malfunction was on panel 9, third corridor. She found it in under 4 minutes because she knew this building the way some people know their own homes, every corner, every system, every sound it made when something was slightly wrong. The humidity reader beeped twice. She traced the fault to a small pipe joint behind the access panel, applied a temporary seal from her kit bag, and wrote the full report by hand on the floor because her clipboard was easier to use that way. She was back in the service elevator before 6:30. The corridor behind her was exactly as she had found it. She had touched nothing she was not supposed to touch. She filed the report the moment she reached level 4 and went to make her morning tea. What she did not see, on her way out, was the small red indicator light on the corridor camera above panel 9. The 31st floor cameras always stored to a secondary server. That was how Cashin reviewed them personally, without going through the security team. He had set that up 3 years ago and never mentioned it to anyone. She also did not see what was already inside panel 7, 2 doors down from where she had been working. A sealed folder, Shin Group letterhead, wedged between the duct lining and the wall. It had been there for several weeks. Whoever had put it there had not yet come back for it. Which meant it had not been meant to stay. Someone had expected it to be found. At 8:03 a.m., Talia's desk phone rang. She picked it up. Facilities, Buhari speaking. The voice on the other end was Kwame, head of building security, Ghanaian British, and her only real friend on the payroll. You were on 31 this morning, he said. Yes, she said. A pause. Voluntarily, he said. Yes, she said. Another pause, longer this time. I'm going to start keeping a file on you, he said, and hung up. Talia smiled at her tea and went back to work. Cashin reviewed the 31st floor footage at 6:45 a.m., the same way he reviewed it every morning, alone at his desk before Minjin arrived. He almost moved past it. The timestamp was early, the corridor was quiet, and the access log showed a work authorization filed the night before, standard facilities maintenance, fully approved. Nothing unusual. Then he saw her. She moved through the corridor without hesitation, which was the first thing he noticed. Most people who came up to this floor, even with full authorization, moved like they were being watched. They were careful in the wrong way, careful about appearances rather than about the work. This woman was careful about the work. She went directly to the panel, opened it, ran her reader along the joint, found what she was looking for, and fixed it. No wasted movement. No looking around. Just the job. He watched her write the report on the floor. She used a pen from behind her ear. She checked the seal on the envelope twice before she stood up. Then she left, and the corridor was exactly as it had been before she arrived. He paused the footage. Watched it again from the beginning. That same morning, a supply vendor on the Shin Group's Level 12 contract received a formal termination letter. There had been no meeting, no warning call, no extended process. The vendor had missed 2 quality benchmarks and filed 1 inaccurate progress report. A single letter, signed and delivered, was how Cashin handled that kind of thing. By noon, every vendor with a Shin Group contract had heard about it. The building staff had a way of going very still whenever something like this happened, a particular kind of quiet that meant everyone understood the message without needing it explained. Minjun arrived at 7:30 and walked through to the inner office to leave the morning briefing on the desk. He stopped. Cashin was still watching the security footage. On the screen, a woman in work gear was crouching beside a wall panel, writing on a clipboard with a pen she had pulled from behind her ear. Minjun looked at his boss. He looked at the screen. He looked at his boss again. Then he set the briefing file down very quietly, turned around, and walked back out without saying a single word, because in 6 years of working for Cashin Shin, he had learned that some mornings required professional silence. Cashin did not look up. He was already thinking about who she was. Over the next 2 weeks, small things in Talia's world shifted in ways that had no obvious explanation. Her coffee was waiting for her at the level 2 cart 3 mornings in a row before she reached it, paid for and ready, black, 1 sugar, the exact order she gave every day without variation. She asked the cart attendant who had paid. The attendant looked briefly uncomfortable and said it had been arranged on account. Talia asked whose account. The attendant said he wasn't sure of the name. She wrote it down in her notebook. The vendor who had been making her supply orders difficult for 4 months, slow responses, wrong item numbers, a general attitude that suggested her requests were optional, was quietly reassigned off the Shin Group account and replaced with someone who answered emails within the hour. No explanation came down to her level. It simply changed. She wrote that down too. She did not know why yet. That usually meant she would later. Patterns like this did not happen in buildings like this by accident. A parking dispute she had filed 3 months ago, which had been sitting in the facilities queue untouched, was resolved overnight. Her designated spot was confirmed, the conflicting booking removed, and a short note placed in her tray that said the matter had been reviewed and corrected. No signature on the note. By the end of the 2nd week, Talia had a hand-drawn flow chart on a piece of A3 paper that she brought to Kwame's office on a Thursday afternoon and laid flat on his desk. Kwame looked at the chart. He looked at her. He looked at the chart again. Several lines connected several boxes. One box near the center said someone with building-wide admin access. Another said no obvious motive, which is itself suspicious. There were question marks. There were 2 small stars that seemed to be for emphasis. Talia, Kwame said. The man owns the building. She tapped the chart. That's what makes it suspicious. Kwame sat back in his chair and looked at the ceiling for a moment. You built a case against your employer for buying you a coffee. I built a case against an unknown party making unexplained adjustments to my working environment, she said. I don't assign names until I have evidence. That same afternoon, Deo, a junior member of the facilities team, bright and careful, stopped by Talia's desk and mentioned, quietly, that someone had pulled the full access logs for the 31st floor going back 3 months. It was not unusual. Audits happened. But Talia's name appeared more than anyone else's in the log, and Deo thought she should know. Talia went still for exactly 4 seconds. That's just the quarterly review, she said, in the same steady voice she used for everything. Thanks for flagging it, Deo. She did not know for certain that it was the quarterly review. But she had learned a long time ago that certainty, delivered calmly, was one of the most useful tools a person could carry. After Deo left, she sat very quietly at her desk for a while and looked at nothing in particular. She thought about something that had happened that morning in the corridor outside the level 2 coffee cart. 2 members of the executive support team had been walking ahead of her, speaking in Korean, close enough that she could hear every word. She understood enough to know exactly what they were saying. They had been talking about her, about the parking situation being resolved, and what it might mean. They had not looked back once. It had not occurred to either of them that she might understand. She had not reacted. She had simply noted it, the way she noted everything, and kept walking. Then she opened her notebook and added 1 more line at the bottom of the page. She circled it twice. The inspection of Level 31, Panel Series 7 through 12, was scheduled, documented, and fully authorized. Talia had submitted the request 6 days earlier. Kwame had signed off on the concurrent security check the same morning. They took the service elevator up together at 9:20 a.m. on a Tuesday, the way they had done dozens of times on other floors. Panel 7 was first. Talia opened the access cover, ran her handheld sensor along the duct lining, and found the airflow reading within normal range. She made a note. Panel 8, the same. Panel 9 had a minor filter buildup she photographed and logged. She opened panel 10 at 9:34 a.m. It was there between the duct lining and the outer wall, a sealed internal folder, Shin Group letterhead across the front, no damage, no dust. Sitting there like it had been placed carefully, not dropped. She picked it up with her work gloves on. Kwame was 3 feet to her left, running his own check on the panel frame. He turned at the small sound of the cover shifting and looked directly at what she was holding. He saw the letterhead. His expression did not change, but he stopped moving. 10 seconds passed. She could open it. She was on the 31st floor with the head of building security and a sealed folder and nothing but corridor light and silence around them. She could open it and know something. She could open it and have something. She could open it and spend the rest of her life being the person who opened it. She pulled an internal mail envelope from her kit bag. She carried them as standard because she found misfiled documents in this building more often than people expected. She wrote on the front in her clearest handwriting, "Misfiled, please reroute," and the 31st floor administration address below it. She inserted the sealed folder without opening it, sealed the envelope, and turned to Kwame. "Can you log this as found and rerouted? I want it documented." Kwame looked at her for a moment. "You want a witness?" "I want a paper trail," she said. "There is a difference." He logged it on his handheld device. Time, location, item description, action taken. She sent it through the internal mail system before they left the floor. By 9:52 a.m. they were back in the service elevator. The inspection continued on level 29 as scheduled. They did not discuss it again that day. What Talia did not tell Kwame was that her hands had been steady the whole time. Not because she was not afraid, but because she had decided, in those 10 seconds, that the only version of this situation she could live with was the one where nobody had any reason to question what she had done. Not then. Not ever. She had made herself a witness to her own integrity, and she had made Kwame one too. That evening, Cashin Shin received a sealed internal envelope at the 31st floor administration desk. He opened it. Read the handwritten note on the front. Read it again. Sat with it for a long time. Then he looked at the name at the bottom of the facilities log attached to the rerouting record. T. Buhari. Level 4. Facilities operations. He had not been surprised in 5 years. Minjun was reviewing contracts in the adjacent office at 2:17 p.m. when he saw it happen through the glass. Cashin was at his desk. He had been still for several minutes, which was not unusual. Then he reached forward and picked up the internal phone, the building line, the one connected directly to every desk in Shin Tower, and dialed a number. Minjun had worked for Cashin Shin for 6 years. He had seen him negotiate with city officials, manage complicated situations with the kind of quiet authority that made other people feel they had made the decision themselves, and walk through difficult rooms without ever raising his voice. In all of that time, Minjun had never once seen him use the internal building line to contact anyone below the 30th floor. Not once. He stopped typing. On level 4, the facilities desk phone rang. The room went the kind of quiet that happens when everyone hears something they were not expecting. Deo looked up from her screen. The 2 maintenance coordinators near the window both turned. Talia looked at the display on her phone. Extension 3400. The 34th floor. Deo mouthed the words "oh no" from across the room. Talia picked up. Facilities, Buhari speaking. The voice on the other end was calm and even, with the particular quality of someone who chose every word before they said it. "Miss Buhari. My office. When you have a moment." The line went quiet. He had already hung up. Talia set the receiver down. She saved the email she had been writing. She stood up and straightened her jacket. She looked across the room at the glass partition that separated the facility's office from the security corridor, where Kwame was visible at his desk. He was already looking at her. She did not know how he had found out in the 30 seconds since the call ended, but she had stopped being surprised by Kwame's information network a long time ago. He gave her one slow nod. The kind that meant, you are ready for this, even if it does not feel that way yet. She took the main elevator, not the service one, because she was going as a professional and not as maintenance staff, and the difference mattered to her. The elevator stopped at the 28th floor and a senior executive got in, looked at the illuminated button for the 34th floor, and spent the remaining 6 floors looking directly at the elevator doors with the careful expression of someone who had decided they had not seen anything. The doors opened. Talia stepped out. The 34th floor was different from the floors below it in the way that places are different when the person who runs them has a specific idea of how things should feel. Quiet, but not empty. Clean lines. No unnecessary objects. The kind of space that communicated, without any sign or instruction, that people here did not waste time. Sarah, the floor assistant, stood when Talia came off the elevator and walked her directly to the office at the end of the corridor without stopping to ask her name. That meant Cashin had already said she was coming. That meant he had been certain she would come. Talia filed that away. The door was open. The office was exactly what she had expected and nothing like what she had prepared for. She had expected the view, the full harbor spread out below the floor-to-ceiling glass, the water gray and flat in the afternoon light, the kind of view that cost more than her annual salary and knew it. She had expected the clean lines, the minimal desk, the absence of anything decorative or unnecessary. She had expected the silence. She had not expected him to stand when she walked in. It was a small thing. A very ordinary thing in most rooms. But Talia had been in enough rooms in this building to know that Cashin Shin did not perform courtesy. If he did something, it was because he meant it. She filed it away without letting it show on her face and walked to the chair across from the desk. The internal envelope sat between them, opened neatly along the top edge. He looked at her for a moment before he spoke. You didn't open it. It was not a question. It wasn't addressed to me, she said. Most people would have. She considered that honestly. Most people would have a lot of explaining to do, then. Something shifted very slightly in his expression. Not a smile. More like a decision being confirmed. He asked how the rest of the inspection had gone. She told him, briefly and accurately, because she did not see a reason to be anything other than precise. He listened the way she had noticed he always listened, completely, without interrupting, without performing attention. He simply gave it. Midway through the conversation, his phone buzzed on the desk. He did not look at it. It buzzed a second time. He let it go. On the third buzz, he turned it face down without glancing at the screen. Talia noticed. She did not ask about it because in 5 years of running this building, Cashin Shin had never turned his phone face down for a meeting with anyone. He was always the one other people waited for. He thanked her for returning the document. He said it without performance, the way he said everything, directly, as a fact he was simply reporting. She accepted it without deflecting, which was harder than it sounded, because her instinct for the past 3 years had been to say it was nothing, it was just procedure, it was just her job. She did not say any of that. She said, "You're welcome," and meant it. Before she stood, she asked the question that had been sitting quietly at the back of her mind since panel 10. Not aggressively. Just directly, the way she asked everything. "Can I ask how it got there?" Cashin was quiet for a moment. "Someone who no longer works here made a poor decision," he said. "It was meant to be retrieved the same night." "It wasn't. If it had reached the wrong desk, it would have created a problem I do not delegate." That was all. No detail, no follow-up. She did not push. He told her she could go. She stood, shook his hand because that was what professionals did, and walked back out through the quiet corridor to the elevator. The doors closed. She exhaled once, slowly. Then she stood up straight and looked at the numbers descending. On level 4, the facility's office door opened and Kwame stepped out into the corridor. When the elevator opened, he was already standing there with his arms folded and a look on his face that suggested he had been waiting for some time. 26 minutes, he said. Talia walked past him toward her desk. Were you counting? I run security, he said, falling into step beside her. I track time in motion. It's a professional habit. She sat down and opened her email. Then professionally, I would like you to know it went fine. I know, Kwame said. Minjun texted me. Talia looked up. Minjun has your number? Kwame sat down across from her with the expression of a man who had more information than he was prepared to share at this time. Drink your coffee, he said. It's getting cold. For the 3 weeks that followed, Cashin appeared in places that were technically explainable. He joined the walkthrough for the Level 12 renovation project, which was within his authority as the building's owner, even if nobody could remember him joining a renovation walkthrough before. He attended a facilities review meeting, which was also within his authority, even if Talia had been running those meetings for 2 years without a single person above level 10 showing up. He was at the level 2 coffee cart on a Wednesday morning at 7:18, which was harder to explain professionally, but not impossible. He never manufactured conversation. He would ask a direct question about the project, or make a single observation about the review, and then listen. He did not linger. He did not perform. He was simply, consistently, present in places where she happened to be working. Talia tracked all of it in a second, smaller notebook she kept in her kit bag. Not the Sunday notebook, this one was strictly observational. Dates, locations, duration, context. She was not paranoid. She was a person who understood that information, gathered carefully and without emotion, told you things that feelings alone could not. By the end of the 3rd week, the picture the notebook gave her was this: a powerful man, a sensitive document, and a job offer she had not yet officially received but could feel coming the way you feel weather changing. Not everyone in the building would agree with it. And the question she could not resolve, sitting at her kitchen table on a Wednesday evening with the notebook open in front of her, was whether the interest was genuine or whether it was management. Whether she was being recognized or being contained. She went to Minjun. Not Cashin. Minjun. She found him at his desk at 7:04 p.m. when the 34th floor was quiet and the only light was from his screen and the harbor visible through the window at the far end. She sat down across from him without being invited, which she decided was acceptable given the nature of the question, and she asked him directly. Is the operations role being offered because of my work, or because of what I know? Minjun was quiet for a long moment. He looked at his desk. Then he looked at her with the expression of someone choosing to give a careful person the honest answer rather than the safe one. Miss Buhari, he said. In 6 years, I have never seen him call anyone below the 30th floor. I have never seen him appear at the level 2 coffee cart. And I have never, not once, seen him write a job description himself. He opened his desk drawer and slid a single printed page across to her. He wrote yours. I typed it afterward. I can tell you the difference. She read it. It was precise. It was specific. It described not the role she had been hired to do, but the role she had actually been doing, every informal responsibility she had absorbed over 3 years without title or additional pay. It read like something written by someone who had been watching carefully for a long time. She sat with that for a while. On the way to the parking structure, she called Kwame. He answered on the first ring. I think I have been an idiot, she said. Kwame was quiet for exactly 1 second. I have been waiting for this call for 3 weeks, he said. She told him he could have said something. He said, you had a flow chart, Talia. You were not ready for what I would have said. She got into her car and sat there for a moment. Then she drove home. Saturday arrived gray and quiet, the kind of morning Myrie City had in early November when the harbor fog came in overnight and stayed until noon. Talia made tea, sat down at her kitchen table, and opened the Sunday notebook, on a Saturday, which she had never done before, because the Sunday notebook was for Sundays. But she did not open it to write. She opened it to read. She read from the beginning. The 5-year plan was there from the first pages, written in her careful handwriting on the night she had arrived in Myrie City 3 years ago with 2 suitcases and a contract that was supposed to last 18 months. The consultancy. The client list she intended to build. The kind of operations work she had always known she was capable of doing, if she could just find the right room to do it in. She had updated the notebook every Sunday since then, adjusting timelines, adding skills, tracking progress. She had been thorough and consistent and entirely, quietly serious about it. She read all the way through to the current week. Then she sat with her tea going cold and looked at what the notebook actually said when you read it as a whole, rather than page by page. What it said was this: she had spent 3 years making herself excellent and making herself invisible at the same time. She had solved problems before they became problems and left before anyone could connect the solution to her name. She had been reliable in ways that never showed up in any meeting, in any report, in any conversation above level 10. She had confused staying unnoticed with staying safe, and somewhere along the way those two things had fused together into a single habit that she had stopped questioning. She thought about the document in the duct. The 10 seconds. The paper trail she had built not because she was afraid, but because she had understood, in that moment, that her only protection was her own record. She had been doing that for 3 years. Just never out loud. She picked up her phone and called Kwame. He answered on the first ring, which meant he had been awake for a while. "I've been hiding," she said. It had worked. That did not mean it had been enough. "I know," he said. "I've been waiting for you to notice." She asked him how long. He was quiet for a moment. "Since the morning you fixed the leak on 31 and came back to the desk at 6:40 and didn't tell a single person what you'd done. I thought, that woman is either the most humble person in this building, or the most scared. Took me about a week to figure out which." The fog outside was beginning to lift. Talia looked at the Sunday notebook on the table in front of her. She turned to the first blank page. She wrote one line at the very top, above the rest of the plan, in the same careful handwriting she used for everything. "Start here." Then she closed the notebook and went to make fresh tea, because this was a Saturday in November and she had work to do. 3 weeks before Young-Soo Shin arrived in Myrie City, Cashin had placed the formal offer letter on Talia's desk himself. Not through Minjun, not through Sarah, not through internal mail. He had walked it down to level 4 at 7:55 a.m. on a Monday before the rest of the floor arrived, set it on her desk, and left without waiting. She had read it twice, asked one question about the reporting structure in a brief email, and signed it the same afternoon. Neither of them made a point of it. Young-Soo Shin arrived in Myrie City on a Thursday morning and the building knew it before she reached the lobby. Not because anyone announced her. Because the 34th floor moved differently when she was coming, Minjun's pace slightly faster, Sarah's responses slightly shorter, the general atmosphere of the executive level shifting from its usual controlled quiet into something more like careful. Cashin's mother had built the original Shin Group from a shipping logistics firm with 12 employees into the structure her son now ran, and she had done it by paying attention to everything and tolerating nothing that did not meet her standard. She arrived for the hotel operations review at 10 a.m. with 2 assistants and no unnecessary conversation. She shook hands with the people she needed to meet, reviewed the briefing documents during the elevator ride up, and was seated at the head of the boardroom table before the room had fully settled. Talia was 4 seats down, with her operations report in front of her and her notebook open to the relevant page. She had been introduced at the start of the meeting, head of operations, Shin Group Legal Holdings, and Young-Soo had looked at her with the careful, assessing attention of someone filing information away for later. Polite. Measured. Not warm. The review ran for 90 minutes. Young-soo moved through each section efficiently, asked precise questions, and flagged 2 items for follow-up. Talia answered the questions directed at her clearly and without extra words, because she had learned that extra words in a room like this usually worked against you. Near the end of the meeting, Young-soo turned to Kashin and spoke to him in Korean. Her tone was conversational, unhurried, the tone of someone speaking to her son about a matter already partially understood between them. She asked him whether Talia understood what she had walked into when she found the document, and whether she appreciated the position that had placed her in. The table went quiet in the specific way that tables go quiet when a person has said something in a language they have assumed nobody else at the table speaks. Talia put her pen down. She answered in Korean. Not quickly, not sharply, in the same even, unhurried tone she used for everything. She said she knew exactly what she had walked into and exactly what she had walked back out of, and how she had walked out of it. She said she believed that was the reason she was sitting at this table in this meeting rather than being asked to explain herself somewhere she had not been invited. Then she picked up her pen again, like the conversation had already moved on. The boardroom was completely still. Young-soo looked at her for a long time. Then she looked at Kashin, a look that carried something between them that Talia could not fully read, something old and layered. Then she looked back at Talia. She picked up her own pen. Good, she said, in English, as though no transition had occurred. Let's talk about the contract. Kashin did not smile. But his mother did, very briefly, before she looked back down at her papers. And Minjun, who was sitting 2 seats to Talia's left, wrote something in the margin of his notes and then turned the page over so nobody could see it. There were people in that room who understood exactly what had almost happened on the 31st floor. None of them said it out loud. 3 months passed, the way good months do, not quickly, but fully. Talia Buhari's name was on a door on the 33rd floor of Shin Tower, in clean letters on a glass panel beside the office entrance. Head of Operations, Shin Group Legal Holdings, Myri City Division. It was not a large door or a particularly dramatic one, but it was hers, and she had stood in front of it for a moment on her first morning in the role, simply looking at it, before she went inside and started work. Kwame had described the location, 1 floor below Kashin's, as architecturally romantic. She had told him to please never say that again. He had said it once more very quietly as he walked away, so technically he had kept his word. The Sunday notebook had a new first line on the opening page, written above everything else, "Start here." The 5-year plan below it was still intact, but it looked different now, not like a future she was trying to convince herself was possible, but like a set of directions to a place she was already moving toward. On a Tuesday morning in January, Talia was on the 31st floor at 5:47 a.m. This was not unusual. The early checks had become hers in the way that habits become yours when you have done them long enough, not required, just natural, a part of how she began a working day. She liked the building at this hour. The systems were honest when no one else was watching them. So was she. She was running the Panel 7 sensor check when she heard footsteps in the corridor behind her. Even. Unhurried. She did not turn around immediately because she knew those footsteps by now, the particular pace of a person who moved through every space like he had decided exactly how he was going to move through it before he arrived. Kashin stopped beside her. He looked at the humidity reader in her hand, then at the panel, then at her. "Still doing the early checks yourself," he said. It was not quite a question. "I like the building at this hour," she said, looking at the panel reading. "It's honest." He was quiet for a moment, in the way he was quiet when he was thinking about something properly rather than just waiting to respond. "So are you," he said. They stood together in the quiet of the 31st floor as the harbor light began to come through the corridor window, pale and flat and clear, the way January light is in Myri City before the rest of the day catches up with it. 2 people who had both spent a long time building lives that did not require anyone else, standing in the same silence, which was, for both of them, the simplest and most honest way they knew how to be present. Downstairs, Kwame reviewed the 5:47 a.m. corridor footage the way he reviewed it every morning, Because he ran security and it was his business to know. He watched it once. He nodded once. Then he opened a new document on his desktop, typed 4 words, "I told you so," and saved it to a folder he had labeled, some weeks ago, simply, Talia. Some things in a building were infrastructure. Some things were just evidence. And some problems never became problems at all.